Hello everybody. Today I'll be ranking all the Stellar Blade bosses. I will be doing it in terms of quality, not difficulty, and I'll be doing it from worst to best. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but I really enjoy doing these boss ranking videos, so I really hope you all enjoy. I am doing it as a two-parter just because it is really difficult for me. I do this more as a hobby, and I don't have a lot of time to do this, so it helps to keep me going to see, for example, like a part one video doing well. I do want to keep the production value very high for you, so I thought I'd do this and then I'd work on the next set of bosses later. So, anyways, I hope you enjoy this boss ranking, and let's get started. Alright, for our last place, we're going to have the Corruptor fight with the Dozer. In my opinion, this is really the most poorly optimized fight based on this game's mechanics. I feel like the target lock on does not really suit two bigger boss like opponents very well. And the Dozer is one of the more armored standard enemies in the game. I feel like he adds a really annoying element to this fight instead of improving it. Yeah, in my opinion, I think the difficulty of this fight just doesn't make it fun at all. Like any of the other fights in the game, the difficulty, if it's difficult, it makes it very enjoyable, but this is the rare exception. It doesn't feel like this was really designed for this game. It feels like more really just a filler boss because you fight the Corruptor twice before this, and I think that the devs at Shift Up didn't really want you to fight him three times in the same playthrough, so they sort of did this as like a cop out, just sort of to keep three fights in, but make this one at least feel different. And I think it really shows. I think that this is the weakest fight in the game by far, and it feels like the most random and forced fight in the game. Gang bosses can work if done properly. Like, for example, even though the Godskin duo, many argue, is a very good fight in Elden Ring, I still think that it had some purpose to it, and you could tell that FromSoft clearly wanted that fight in there. And despite it being annoyingly difficult, I think a fight like that trumps this one, and that fight's not even beloved by a lot of people. I will say, Corruptor himself was a pretty solid introductory boss to this game. I know he's not even the first boss, he's like the third one technically, but I do think his attacks are fairly simple and relatively easy to be countered. Like, for example, his slime, like anytime he shoots it, like the two times in a row from long range, and of course when he does it at medium range or the fountain at short range, I think are really fun to counter mix with his really a lot of charge attacks and aggressive attacks from the front. I will say though, I just don't like the Dozer that much. It is definitely one of my least favorite enemies in the game in general. And the fact that this is the one they picked for the boss fight really annoys me. He does fit the Corruptor really well in terms of aesthetic, but I just don't like him. It's a lot of the really armored fights in this game. I don't like as much. I do solid enemy to fight though when you can dictate the pace of the fight. When you can do it slowly and wisely parry and dodge through his attack string and all of his charges, but having a boss out of all enemies make it so you really have to speed that up and can't take as much advantage of when you do win in those attack strings is just a really bad design choice. And due to this, this boss really has to be at the bottom for me. And it's even lower than the base Corruptor because I just think it's just a more annoying and slightly more difficult version of that fight. And let's move on to the next boss. Alright, in our second to last place, we're going to have Abaddon. This is only going to be for the first fight in normal difficulty. I think the fight in hard difficulty really fixes this, but I thought it'd be important to have this fight since there's such a disparity, in my opinion, between this one and the second fight, and at any point in hard difficulty. For this version of the fight, I have to say I really enjoy his dual sword attacks. All the patterns he does with them are really fun, and they are also somewhat easy to parry, and the strings aren't that long, which make me see why they made him the first real boss of the game. His jump attacks in the strings as well, I think, are really fun to counter, and I really like the lightning he has in the second phase, adding some extra damage to his attacks. It looks really cool, and it makes it a little more scary, especially the first time you're fighting him. Along with this, I think the range lightning attacks he has and where he spawns lightning to missile into the ground are some of his best attacks. and do make this fight very memorable and enjoyable. I do wish they maybe would have tweaked the settings just a little bit in this fight to make him maybe at least have like 10 to 15% more health and maybe do around like 5 to 10% more damage. I think this would have definitely made it so I wouldn't have to rank this separately between his next appearance in the game. Just to make sure I wasn't giving an unfair bias to this version of the fight, I did fight him again in the boss challenge mode in minimal settings. I still found him to be extremely easy to fight, and I have to say that this doesn't mean he's bad in quality, which this will be shown when I rank the next version of the fight much higher than this on the list. But for this version of the fight, I do have to rank him lower, unfortunately. That doesn't mean he's bad. He's definitely still like a C or B rank boss. But the other boss that I'm going to rank ahead of him, I'm also going to penalize a little bit for difficulty. But I do think that boss is much more creative than this one, at least this version of the fight. And I would have felt really bad putting that boss in the second to last spot. So we'll go to that one right now. And that's all I have to say for this version of Abaddon. Alright, for our 16th place, we're going to have Maelstrom. Both these fights were very similar. There are two in the game, but I really cannot tell them apart in terms of what's different. So I'm just gonna rank them together. I actually think they are probably the same fight. Um, I will say this guy was fairly simple and easy, but I really love the atmosphere of this fight. Being limited to your gun was a little more terrifying, and the whole section of the game had more of like a horror-esque atmosphere of the Natibas, which I really enjoy. Just being limited to not using your sword. However, I do think that this fight is way too easy. It is enjoyable with shooting the points to be able to deal damage to him. Um, I also really like the laser range attack he does. I think that's probably his coolest attack. But the other range attacks are not the worst. Like he just summons like the smaller Natibas at you that explode. But I find that they're really easy to dodge. Like almost like comically easy if you just like run to the left or right or dodge slightly. It's just too easy. Um, I do like it is fun to use the different types of ammo and have a good chance to use those during a boss fight, which I like about this one. However, I do find that the normal ammo is probably the best to use during this fight. I do like rotating to the more alternative ammo just for fun though, like the lock-on missiles and the shotgun. I think the most fun I had was getting up close and using the shotgun on him. It's just something I really enjoyed. And there's not much more to say about this guy. I do enjoy him in the game, but I can't really rank him that high because a lot of the other bosses are a lot more intricate than this one, and the difficulty makes it so you really get more of an experience in the fight. However, I don't mind that there's a handful of bosses in this game that are a little easier, and I think they do add something to the roster that some of the harder bosses can't do themselves. And overall, I will say I like this one, but again, I'm just going to have to rank him low on the list. And on to the next boss. Alright, in our 15th spot, we're going to have the original Corruptor boss fight. And I enjoy this one, of course, more than the one with the Dozer because it's just so much less annoying. He does really feel like a starter boss, though. As much as Abaddon is nerfed in the first fight, Corruptor doesn't really feel this way. Like, he just feels like he's just a weak boss. And I feel like he belongs in this spot on the list because of that. I do enjoy him. Again, I'll sum up his attacks again very briefly and what I like about him. Just, I do like that he charges around the arena a lot with his head. He's got a lot of head melee attacks as well. He does a close range where he's very aggressive with those. And there's a lot of good block and parry windows. And he doesn't have too much health, which I think is great for one of the first bosses in the game, although this does hinder his quality in my opinion compared to the other bosses that come later than him. But I feel like he does really belong in the game. I do enjoy him. Also, his range attacks are pretty good. Like all of his slime attacks, they make him aggressive at range. And they're good to practice parrying and the parry mechanic in this game at long range. But they're easy to dodge even if you can't do this quite yet, which I do think again makes it good for the starter fight. And probably my favorite is the slime attacks for the fountain he does. I think that does a lot of damage, but it's very fair for the beginning of the game. And it's a fun attack to just dodge backward and aggressively launch an onslaught once he's done with it. I really do enjoy that. And really, I think for Cropter, that's all I'm gonna have to say because I already said basically everything I had to when I mentioned him with the Dozer. So that's gonna be all I have to say. And let's get on to the next boss. Okay, I had a hard time ranking the next set of bosses to finish for this part of the list. They're all very, very close in how good they are, which I have to say I like them all. This is not just because they're lower on the list doesn't mean I don't like them. I think they are all pretty good. I ultimately decided to put Behemoth in this spot of the list, but I still have to say I really, really enjoyed him. I thought his strings and melee swings were really good. They were kind of like unorthodox, and the timing was a bit off and more raw compared to a lot of the bosses in this game. And these were really, really good. And the dodge window is well on some of them. I even like mixing the dodge and parries together on the longer windows. And I felt like he almost like forced you to do that, which a lot of the bosses in this game you either dodge or parry. I like that this guy you could do a mix of both. And also the one where he's like standing on his legs and doing the melee was really terrifying for me, and I really enjoyed that attack. And also, I like the range attack he had. I thought was pretty good, where he launches little tornadoes at you. I think that was a good chance to just dodge that and get in a nice counterattack window. I also felt the time to get in combos between his melee strings were relatively fair. For the most part, I had no problems with this. There were a few like minor critiques I had with some of the longer combos being just outside of the range of being able to do, which I had a couple silly deaths in this fight where I was just like I felt like I didn't deserve to die, but that's really just a minor critique. And I have to say, I also really enjoyed his second phase. It was fun where his attacks are just more powerful than they are in the first phase. And I liked his little AoE attack. I thought that was fun. And again, somewhat easy to dodge. And I do enjoy his jump attack. I thought that was a really fun and terrifying attack to do and just dodge and then eventually get a lot of strikes in before he gets back up. I liked his little grab attack with his mouth. I have to say though, I felt like he did this a little too much, and it was fun. I think the devs definitely want to experience it, but especially in hard mode, I was getting that like every like about 20, 30 seconds in the second phase of the fight a couple of times, and the novelty kind of wore off. I do enjoy those like little QTEs because they're not challenging in this game, where it is fun to really mess with the boss, and I do enjoy it. I have to say it's probably a good mechanic then. Maybe if it was slightly less prevalent, I would appreciate it more though. And that's all I really have to say about this guy. I do enjoy the fight. He is a very unique boss, being more like a beast compared to like the I don't know, like the other game that feel a little less raw. And let's get on to the next one. All right, coming in our 14th place, I'm gonna put Stalker. I have to say, I really like the speed of this fight. Um, I think this makes it really fun and enjoyable to do this, and it does feel like if you practice this, it would definitely make you better at the game. And I've definitely practiced this fight a few times and really enjoyed it since the boss challenge mode came out. Overall, sweeps and jumps are fairly easy to predict when they are coming. Really terrifying to really counter and dodge. Like even if you know this proper string, it's hard getting the exact timing. And I really enjoyed practicing this. Really, the timing of these and the amount of strikes he does, and him having a couple various patterns, like one where he's more ground based and he sort of slams to the ground and does a lot of like swiping and like reverse things of his claws that I really enjoy, or one where he's more like aerial and like high up on you doing the string, does make it really difficult again. And I really like that this guy has a lot of depth to him. Also, as for his other attacks, his like ground slam slash him throwing a rock is pretty serviceable. I enjoy this. At the beginning of the fight, it's short as just another attack, but in the middle of the fight, it does really add to the making the flow of this fight feel really unique. And sometimes you can really get a good counter in after this, or maybe you get hit by it and he's really aggressive towards you and you have to basically fight for your life after being close to full health. And also, like his charges are fun. They're really easy to they're fairly easy to dodge and get out of the way, and you can definitely get some free hits on them. But they do look cool, and it's kind of funny just seeing him like sometimes miss you really badly. But again, like it would probably be better attack if it was a little more accurate, and maybe he could like do a small string afterwards to make it a little more terrifying. In the desert, I feel like this is a little better, and I do think I enjoy the fight with him in the desert a little more. And I think this fight's a lot more difficult for whatever reason, even though it's very shortly after the first one in the story. I also felt the way he jump at you in this fight, especially in this version, was just really terrifying. It did feel almost like a different fight. I did rank them both again at the same place because I feel like they are pretty similar. I do think though they tuned the desert one not just to be more like higher damage values and like health, but he also think he is a little more aggressive even than this first like aggressive appearance. And I have to say I really enjoy that. And really one of the last things I'm going to say is I do like the animation a lot where he pauses the fight a little bit to grind at your sword with his teeth. I think that one is a really cool looking animation. I know the game does a lot of those in the boss fights, but I think this one in particular was really cool and really suited the fight. And overall, that's all I had to say for this guy. He was a very enjoyable boss. He's right in this, like, I'd say, lower middle tier in comparison to the other bosses of this game, but I think in most other games, he'd be more towards, like, the top. And I have to say, let's get on to the next one. Alright, for 12th place, we're going to have what's actually technically the first boss in this game. We're going to have Brute. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this fight. His chain balls are definitely probably one of my favorite Nativo weapons in the game. I really enjoy dodging and countering these. They hit hard, of course. They look big, and they hit about as hard as they look. And I really enjoy that. I also enjoy really his like flame-based AOE's. I think they're some of like the most visually striking moves in the game. His big one he does that he really charges up is especially one of my favorite moves to counter in the game. And then if you get that perfect dodge, it's really fun to just be really aggressive with him afterwards. I also do enjoy his general like swipe attacks that he does with he sort of like circles around and tries to hit you with the chain balls. I think those are really good attack string. It's fun to get the counter in there. He most of the bosses feel really easy to like get hits on. He feels like one of like the actually probably one of the easier difficult bosses in the game if that makes sense to do this too. But I think it adds to the quality a little bit to him. I like it. I also really enjoy his purple counter window. And actually, not because if you're successful, but when you're not successful, I really enjoy the animation he has where he just sort of throws you up and he's just so aggressive to you. It's just one of the most brutal attacks in the game, and I don't know how it doesn't do more damage of how the animation looks. And overall, I also really like his second phase. I feel like that there's more fire AoE attacks. I noticed there's like about two more attack strings I didn't notice in the first phase. Like one where he jumps up like twice, I believe, and he's very aggressive and does a lot of damage. I enjoy that. And the one where he's sort of letting the chain balls loose in the air, kind of like it almost like reminds you of General Grievous in Star Wars, like the movie does against Obi-Wan Kenobi in the, of course, Revenge of the Sith, where he's just twirling the light. His fire attack variations, again, I just want to emphasize that as much as I like the main one, I also do enjoy the other ones. The one where he slams the ball constantly into the ground, the summon flames in the ground, I enjoy. And I enjoy the smaller ones he doesn't have to charge up, but he can do really fast, where you can dodge and counter that. I enjoy that. And actually, there's not much more to say. He's actually a fairly basic boss. I will say he's probably more basic than like the last two I ranked before him, but I just enjoy the flow of this fight a lot, and I just think it visually looks really cool. And it is fun beating the first boss you saw in the game to show how much like I guess Eve's commoner journey and how powerful she is, and it is really fun beating this fight in the tutorial if you can. I failed miserably the first time, but my new game plus playthrough I beat him pretty instantly. It was cool to beat him with Tachi, and the kill animation in that was really fun because especially because Tachi's involved. And I'm gonna stop rambling about him, but overall I have to say he has a good spot in the list, and We're almost towards the end of this part, so let's get done with the last two, and let's get on to the next boss. All right, coming up next on the list, I put Juggernaut. This guy's probably one of my favorite bosses. I'm not sure is that popular among the community, but I still really love fighting him. His hammer attacks kind of make him one of my favorites. I just enjoy the hammer, even though it's a very simple weapon. It gets the job done, makes this a very fun and memorable fight. One of his attacks I really like is, of course, his like first string, where he uses like his triple hammer slam. I really like getting the dodge timing for that and being really aggressive at him afterward. I also enjoy the second phase of version, of course, where he makes the ground burn 3 times in a row. That one really makes the space in this fight feel tight, which I feel like is something not a lot of bosses do in this game. Like the arenas are usually fairly big. I enjoy this arena being pretty small, which is the shipping containers in the background. It makes it like a cool atmosphere and fun for, of course, for the fight. Also says repetitive like sweep attack string. It kind of reminds me like a Souls boss again, more so than an action game boss. It's sort of slower and methodical, and he sometimes like waits like maybe half a second to do the next swing. But I think this makes him like it just gives him some personality, and he kind of forces you to be fast, but oddly enough, he's slower. And I kind of like this dynamic. Like that's one critique I do of Souls games sometimes, where you don't feel that fast, but the boss feels faster. But in a game that's fast like this, I kind of enjoyed the slow boss that was still very dangerous, and you didn't really feel like you can get in some good hits in between hits. But there were still plenty of windows, of course, to do some serious damage to the boss, which made this guy fun for me. I did like also the just dodge timing and the ability like to really debate whether to dodge to the side or back being like really something to think about in this fight. And I feel like really getting those burst counters really again help the speed of this fight, and they're really fun to get. And then of course get like a mini combo afterwards. And of course with his again, I want to mention that triple hammer slam flame attack. It's really cool to have an attack where it feels like really good to double jump the final one. And any boss fight that makes you use the double jump in this game is definitely a good one for me. And I couldn't exactly rank him ahead of the next boss on the list, so let's get on to him. Alright, to finish up this part of the list, I decided to do Gigas. And he has an honorable spot, just getting in the top 10. Some things I like about him are that he hits hard, and he feels like an absolute tank to fight. And heck, some of his attacks just feel like he's absolutely just slamming the hell out of the ground, and you just happen to be there, which is just really terrifying. And similar to Juggernaut, some of his attacks actually feel slow, but the length of his string and just his persistence in getting it done make him feel like a Souls boss in a good way, which again really adds to the enjoyability of him. And some of his combos being finished off with like him just jumping in the air with his fist to try and slam the ground was really terrifying. But there was one of these animations where he would like fall to the ground if you dodged it well enough, and it was fun getting in some hits through here. I also really liked him utilizing his like saw or drill head, like in some of his move strings. It was again like a really cool element that added something special to this fight. And he feels like less linear in terms of like how he moves around the arena, which I really enjoy. Like it does feel like you're fighting a really special boss that is worthy of being an Elder Natiba. His move where he explodes the ground in front of you feels really fitting for the boss, and I enjoy that. His rock throwing attack's pretty serviceable, and it just makes sense for how he looks that he would do an attack like that. So it's not my favorite again, but it does add another element to this fight and makes it so you can't just like set at range for him. His second phase is really similar to his first, so there's not much to say here. He really just makes his fist yellow, and I believe they just do more damage. And it is a little tougher than the first phase, which I enjoy, but it is fairly simple, so I can't give him any extra praise for the second phase. But still, the first phase is so good, and the second phase is basically just like the first one. So I have to say, overall, Gigas is going to be, of course, a great boss on my list, and that's all I really have to say. So that rounds up. That's going to start the top 10. And ooh, one last thing though, I did think when I fought this guy, he's like little head in like the middle of a saw. It kind of reminded me of one of the Bayonetta angels. I'm curious if anybody else thought this. I kind of thought it was really cool. And I have to say, the kill animation of this fight was really awesome. All right, now it's going to end the boss section. I'm just going to get on the conclusion. I'll get started on that. All right, so I feel bad this video took so long for me to make. I got this game a few weeks after release, so I didn't exactly play it at release. And then it took me a few weeks to beat it, so that ultimately made it so my first playthrough was only done then. So I really had to like replay the game at least a little bit to get a good idea of where the bosses sat, and I was pretty busy with my personal life, so that's why this video took so long. But I'm kind of proud of how it turned out. I know some things aren't exactly perfect with the editing, but I'm kind of learning as I go along. I've done videos like this before, but I feel like this is the best one I've done yet so far. If you guys could let me know what you think in the comments, that'd be great. Any suggestions how to get better? I'm using Resolve for these videos, and I think it's really turning out well. And I'm finally starting to really know how to use the software, which I'm really excited about. And I'll try to get part 2 out for the next couple of weeks. It might be challenging again, but I think that the quality of that video might even be better than this. That's my goal really for that video. And I'll figure out some other games to cover, but I don't want this video to be too bloated in length, so I'm probably just going to end it here. And I hope you all have a great day, or have been having a great day depending on when you're watching this, and take care.